Welcome, Dr. Michael Bercik. Dr. Bercik is a board-certified orthopedic surgeon with subspecialty training in both shoulder and elbow surgery, as well as orthopedic traumatology. So after graduating from Georgetown University, Dr. Bercik received his medical degree from Rutgers and did his residency at Rothman Institute in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Dr. Bercik's first fellowship was in trauma and reconstructive surgery at Rutgers. After completing his trauma fellowship, Dr. Bercik completed 2 international fellowships at the renowned Center for Orthopedics is it pronounced Santé, France, and then continued to Melbourne, Australia, where he continued his training at the Melbourne Shoulder and Elbow Center and Monash University. Dr. Bercik is active in research and education. He's published several peer-reviewed journal articles as well as book chapters. A native of northern New Jersey, which we'll get into, and son of an orthopedic surgeon, Dr. Bercik currently resides in Lancaster with his wife, 2 sons, and their dog. So I'm going to get to the hard-hitting questions first.
Okay.
I read that you are a Giants fan.
Yep.
So there's a big draft tonight, actually, in our backyard. So I'm calling in from Ann Arbor, Michigan, just outside of Detroit. So the draft happens to be in Detroit tonight. And so the G-men, who are the G-men going to take? The rumors are swirling. This is hard, it's close to home for me that J.J. McCarthy might be in play. So what do the Giants need?
So they need sort of a lot, to be honest, and that's why there's so much intrigue in this draft versus other ones, because it's been a long time since the Giants were obviously needing to draft a quarterback. And there's also 4 quarterbacks probably going to go in the top 10, maybe 5 or 6 in the first round. So the Giants could go so many different ways.
Wait, are you a Danny Dimes guy?
I'm a Danny Dimes truther. I have been. I believe him, but after 5 years or 6 years, whatever it is now, I finally have fallen off the wagon and I'm now open to drafting new quarterback. But I think my ideal situation is somehow the Giants get Derek May from North Carolina, probably via a trade with the Patriots. I think that's my number 1 goal. And then trading for Brandon Ayuk from the 49ers. That would be my dream scenario. I think the most likely scenario is they sit tight at 6 and they get Malik Neighbors or Roman Odunze. And then I think the third most likely and also my third most favorite option would be J.J. McCarthy. Now, I will put a caveat on here. I know nothing about college football. Everything I learned about college football, I learned.
Yeah, you're from the East Coast.
From the last month, I've been listening to Giants podcasts 1 to 2 hours a day. I'm pretty diehard about it. So everything I've learned about college football players, I've learned in the last month. But now I have I have a lot of conviction in my opinions based on this 1 month.
Yeah, of course.
So, JJ, the only game I ever saw him play was the championship game, and I thought he looked fine. But after he won the championship game, he was oh, he may be a first rounder. And then this happens with the NFL every year. Yeah. It's these people just get pushed up. I guess
he may be the best one. Yeah.
Yeah, you never know. So, and then I heard I saw Vegas odds had JJ McCarthy going to the going to the Chargers, went from 101 to 6-1 in the last 48 hours. So I don't know if Vegas knows something, but there's also a rumor that Harbaugh may draft JJ McCarthy and then trade Herbert to the Vikings for their first round draft pick. So anyway, either way, I think it's gonna be super fun. I'm gonna be excited. I'm gonna be whoever they pick. I'm gonna automatically think that person's gonna be a Hall of Famer. And
as you should.
Yeah, I've already requested my wife. There's 3 days a year where I'm okay, I need to go watch football, and this is one of the days. So my wife has already agreed to take the kids and do bedtime because I'm gonna go watch the draft.
That's awesome. I love it.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. Well, the Giants sit in an intriguing spot. I agree. This year's draft is fascinating because of the quarterbacks. And, now that we're involved in athletics with our Proventus brand, so we work with probably 15 NFL teams and 100 colleges. I'm talking to agents. I'm actually working directly with the players. We do a lot, with Michigan football because we're headquartered here in Ann Arbor.
Do you have any inside information?
Yeah. So no, I mean, nobody really knows.
JJ McCarthy's agent
that whole Harbaugh drafting JJ thing cracks me. I doubt that happens. I mean, Justin Herbert's, I think, a top 5 quarterback, but I mean, so I've got to know JJ and he's just a great human being. He's got all the tools. He'd be a great leader. He checks the mental, not only the physical box, but who knows? Like that class 3 years or 2 years ago, 3 years ago, what it was like, all those guys are on different teams except for Trevor Lawrence. So nobody knows. But it'll be fun to watch.
JJ McCarthy did an interview and they actually asked him, like, where do you think you're going to end up? And he said the Giants, interestingly. Like, you don't
Yeah,
usually hear players say that. It's calling a shot at the 6th pick, but we'll see.
sure. Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. I know we'll all be watching tonight. So we are starting to do a lot more in New Jersey, as we talked about a bit before we got on, and your legacy, family legacy, rings on there. So if your ears are ringing, when we're at Union County or University Orthopedics or Princeton or the like, the Bercik name is well received. Obviously, your dad, I mentioned, was an orthopedic surgeon. So it seems like orthopedics is in your DNA. What made you want to become an orthopedic surgeon?
So obviously my dad was an orthopedic surgeon, so I knew a bit about it, obviously. But when I went into medical school, I actually thought I was going to be an ophthalmologist. I thought that was the most interesting thing. And then I was trying to decide what to do, and I figured I'm gonna. I talked to one of the residents at Rutgers, and I said, "Do you mind if I just like take call with you on like a Wednesday night and just see what it's all about?" And Rutgers is in Newark, New Jersey, so it's high trauma, very busy type of place. And the entire night from like 5 p.m. when I finished classes and went over there, met with him until like 4 a.m. the next day. We're running around, we're in the ER, he's covered in plaster, he's putting on casts, he's like doing reductions and all this stuff. And I was like, all right, this is it. I mean, that was like that locked it into me. It just seemed like such a cool thing. It was like you really get to use your hands. All the guys, and the girls and the women that were there all seemed to get along really well. So very collegial kind of attitude. Um, it just seemed like fun, honestly. It just,
Yeah.
sometimes you get this gut instinct, like this is going to be fun. And it was fun. It is fun. It's remaining fun. So,
That's awesome. And so I believe family, and your wife's from the Pennsylvania area, so brought you to Pennsylvania. How long have you been at Lancaster Orthopedic Group?
I have been here since 2016, April 2016.
April
Oh,
2000.
I didn't realize it. I just had my anniversary, April 11th. I didn't even April
Oh,
11th.
nice.
That's like a date that I just remember because that was my first day. I just
Yeah, yeah.
came and went. I didn't even notice. I guess that means I've been here too long now. I guess I'm not even remembering when the annual anniversary comes up. But yeah, I moved here 2016.
That's awesome. And out of curiosity, obviously you have a specialty in shoulder and upper extremity. What's most interesting to you these days in terms of shoulder surgery or, your practice?
Yeah, I would say that the two surgeries that I do the most of now that I'm the most interested in, both like academically and just what I take the most enjoyment out of this procedure performing would be, shoulder replacement with a particular focus on reverse shoulder replacement, and then shoulder arthroscopy. Rotator cuffs, obviously, and then I've over the last year to 18 months, I've started to perform arthroscopic latter J procedures, which is something they've been doing in France for years, but is relatively new in the United States. So I've enjoyed adding that to my arsenal and trying to perfect my technique there.
Awesome. Yeah. So in terms of shoulder surgery, obviously we work with a ton of orthopedic surgeons, maybe 2,500 across the United States. And the feedback consistently, and we work with, thousands of patients. Feedback consistently is that post-op shoulder surgery is painful. And so can you tell me a little bit about the challenges for shoulder patients after surgery?
Sure. So that's true. After lumbar surgery, arthroscopic shoulder surgery is the most painful surgery in orthopedics. It's sort of been reported that way. And interestingly, shoulder replacements are less painful. You would think it's sort of counterintuitive. You make a big incision, you're cutting the bone out, all these things. Those patients tend to do pretty well. It's the shoulder arthroscopy patients, and to this day, I'm not entirely sure why it's so much more painful than other surgeries, but it is. And it's not just pain. There's a lot of issues that happen post surgically with shoulder patients, and I can also speak from personal experience in this. My wife had shoulder arthroscopy, and I saw, so I see this not only from the surgeon standpoint, but I got to see it like every day from the family member of a patient standpoint. And so the few things are, one, pain. Obviously there's just pain associated with it, which can be pretty intense. Number two is sleep. Sleep is a huge thing after shoulder arthroscopy. People struggle with sleep, and they'll often ask me, can I sleep like this? And then can I sleep like that? And what I always say is just sleep however is the most comfortable to you, because I'm not really worried about them messing anything up in their sleep as long as they're wearing their sling. But, often people will have to, either sleep in a recliner for several weeks, or they have to build up a sort of like little barrier in their bed with pillows so that they're sort of cradled. So that's another thing. The third thing is you're just really, it's hard to function with one arm in a sling, which most of these people are in for 4 to 6 weeks, depending on your protocol. So getting dressed is a challenge, driving is a challenge. If you have a younger patient that may have young kids, getting the children into the car seats, those types of things are a challenge. Cooking's a challenge. So, it can really be pretty disruptive in multiple ways, even if they're not having pain issues. Just everything else can be a problem,
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, that's certainly what we see in terms of anecdotally just dealing with patients. And sleep, I think there's probably too much information on the internet now, and I'm a sucker for all things health, wellness, longevity. I actually was just at a summit at UCLA put on by YPO. So kind of the who's who and these celebrity, I call them witch doctors, but they're most of them actual doctors, the Hubermans and the Tia. And they actually had a special guest, Brian Johnson is his name. If you're familiar with him. He made a bunch of money, and then now his endeavor is to try to live, for like 200 years. And so he's spending like millions and millions of dollars on his health and tracking everything. And it's actually pretty fascinating. And he's very regimented and detailed. And they said, okay, what's the secret? What do we need to know? And he said, sleep, sleep, sleep. That everything we've studied, sleep is the most important thing. And so if you can't sleep, I think especially when your body's trying to recover, that's where we've seen, and I'll do a selfless plug here in terms of cold and compression therapy, especially with the iceless technology that patients at the touch of a button, can put that shoulder wrap on. It turns itself on and off, so it's safe to get that sleep with that natural pain relief. We've seen to be a big deal for those patients. Just curious in terms of, your philosophy around, I think the term multimodal pain management gets thrown around a lot. And I don't know if we clearly have identified what that actually means. But what's your post-op regimen?
So I pre-op give everyone Tylenol, Lyrica, and an anti-inflammatory medication, usually Celebrex or something like that. And then post-operatively, I give everyone, unless they have some sort of allergy, 4 days round the clock of ketorolac or Toradol, which is a very powerful anti-inflammatory. And I'll often tell them that this might be the only medication you need. I tell them all to start taking it about 10 p.m. the night before. It's really amazing to me that no matter when the patients get their block, whether it's 7 a.m., 9 a.m., 11 a.m., 1 p.m., they all wear off at 3 o'clock in the morning. It's almost like clockwork. They can wear off at 3 o'clock in the morning. So I always tell them, take your pain medication the night before you go to bed after the first surgery, or excuse me, the night that you go, the night of your surgery before you fall asleep, so that you have a little bit on board, because patients can often play catch up if the pain sort of hits them like a truck and stuff like that. And then I tell them just keep taking it around the clock, the Toradol or Ketorolac for 4 days. And then I do give them narcotics. I give them a smaller dose than I used to. I used to give everyone OxyContin 10 milligrams BID, which is like crazy to me now. Now I do give them something like, oxycodone for breakthrough pain. And that's pretty much it. Now I do have some like colleagues like Luke Austin at Rothman, who's a big pain. He's a shoulder surgeon, but he's done a lot of research on pain, and he's really going to narcotic free. And I think I may get to that point one day. I'm sort of going a little slow with it, but a lot of it, from talking to him about this, is the patient education beforehand. You just have to let patients know that there is going to be some pain, but you can, if you get them in the right mindset and then you use just Tylenol and a powerful anti-inflammatory, that's often all they need. I would say with the cold compression therapy, that's obviously been sort of a game changer in that, because it's reduced narcotic requirements, significantly, both anecdotally, just from what patients have told us, and then also just in terms of the amount of refills we have to do. We just don't do as many as we used to. And then, a lot of it is just telling the patients, like, it's going to be like this for, 3 to 5 days. And then usually about a week or 2 weeks, you're feeling better. And then, from there on, just Tylenol, basically.
I totally agree in terms of expectation setting and how powerful your mind is around kind of what to expect. And there will be pain. This, is surgery. And so I was just with the head baseball coach at Clemson, and he's super successful. I'm biased. He's a good friend. I think he's the best coach in the country. He's in his second year there. He was actually at University of Michigan for a while, and his main focus with his players is the mental aspect, and feelings come and go, but consistency around the mind and the power that has. So I do think setting the right expectations makes a huge difference. Another thing you brought up that's interesting, because it's just your kind of anecdotal take, is that the blocks wear off, or the pain medication wear off at 3 a.m. So at that same conference I was just at UCLA, there was a sleep doctor, and he just mentioned, you ever wonder why, and this is just in general, people tend to wake up from 1 to 3 a.m. And he's like, that's that's biological. He's like, as you go to sleep, your body temperature lowers, and to wake up, your body temperature naturally comes up. And he's like, from 1 to 3 a.m., some people don't notice it, but they actually do wake up. Some people wake up, and so I don't know. That's just putting 2 and 2 together. But most people wake up.
Sleep is really interesting. I mean, there's some theories that, like, it was just until like the Industrial Revolution that people tried sleeping through the night, that there was a first sleep and a second sleep, like in the 15th century and stuff like that. And people would wake up at 1 o'clock in the morning and get up and do things at 1 o'clock and go back to sleep and stuff like that. So this concept of sleeping through the night might be maybe a relatively recent thing in the human race.
Yeah, and he said everyone's different. In terms of night owls, that's a real thing. Or, people that, thrive in the mornings, like that's definitely all biological. So
I'm jealous of the people who can sleep 3 hours and wake up. Like, I guess there's some people who have the physiology that they sleep 3 hours and they wake up as if they slept 8 hours for you or me or something like that. They're just like, right. I feel like you get so much more done.
Yeah.
Those people.
And so you mentioned Sling.
Yeah.
You kind of we'll segue into kind of ancillary private practice programs, but to kind of conclude in terms of post-op. So do you mobilize? Is that a big, like, are you really concerned with them not moving? Because I've kind of heard both, like, I don't really care, or no, I really want them.
Yeah, I mean, the research is sort of, there's arguments for both. I used to do 6 weeks for big tears, 4 weeks for small tears, maybe move them a little quicker if it's just a biceps tenodesis, something like that. And I've just for almost simplicity's sake, I've just moved everyone to 4 weeks in a sling after pretty much every arthroscopic surgery I do, cuff repair or whatnot. And that seems to be working for me. It also keeps it simple just for like, my staff and the physical therapist. They sort of don't have to wonder which surgery I did.
Sure.
Um, but I do have them come out of the sling, multiple times a day to move their elbow, their wrist, their fingers, so they're not getting stiff there. Um, and then I ask them to sleep either in the sling for a full 6 weeks, even if I take it off during the daytime at 4. And if they sort of balk at that, I'll ask them, well, just keep your arm inside your t-shirt or whatever you're wearing at nighttime so that your arm's at least not going up over your head in the middle of the night, sort of constricted by the shirt that you're wearing. And that's sort of the compromise I make with those people. And,
Protect people from themselves, I hear a lot.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, in terms of, as far as ancillary programs at LOG, are you guys dispensing then that sling, the brace and durable medical equipment from the practice?
Yeah, I mean, so just private practice in 2024, right? The collections from seeing patients and doing surgery sort of is no longer enough to keep the lights on, unfortunately, just the market that we're in. So we do have sort of the full assortment of ancillary revenue streams for our practice. That includes DME, slings, braces, all those sorts of things. We also have an MRI machine. We own our own physical therapy unit. We have a surgery center, and then obviously we have the cold compression therapy as one of our ancillary revenue streams as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's just again, I've been on the industry side of orthopedics, basically my entire career, and so all you guys are tend to be my friends, and obviously reimbursement continues to go this way. I would say. In terms of lobbying, orthopedic surgeons don't do the best job of banding together, and insurance companies tend to be better at that. And so, obviously, as health systems continue to grow and consolidate and acquire practices, they're providing all of these services that you've mentioned. I think there's an interest in private equity in getting into orthopedics because I think they see the upside in terms of these ancillary programs. So, but it's tough. You guys are on the hamster wheel in terms of having to see more patients. Probably, I would argue double. In my career, I've seen the amount of patients orthopedic surgeons see in a day double almost, which is a lot. And the amount of surgeries are going up, and so to take the time to add these programs and get the right partners is just tough to do. So I commend you guys for that.
Yeah, it's a little bit of an arms race, right? Like, either the insurance companies or the government says, okay, we're not going to pay for this anymore. And then you have to go out and find another revenue stream. And you're just sort of constantly, maneuvering around each other to maintain our independence. But I think it's, we talk about finances, but it's really better for the community and for the patients. I think if you remain an independent private practice, it's more options for them. It's cheaper, it's much cheaper for a patient to have surgery at our surgery center than it is to go to the hospital in town, which is, a level 3 and, a level 3 facility fee and all these things. So, we're fighting the fight. We're going to stick with it as long as we can, basically.
I love it. I agree. Well, skin in the game too. Like, I've just seen throughout in all aspects of healthcare business, if there's a sense of ownership, the quality, care, all those things tend to go up. So, we'll segue now to cold compression therapy. You mentioned the experience that your wife had shoulder surgery. So I'd love to hear about that experience. How cold compression therapy played a role there. Then obviously we worked together for a long time. So thank you for the opportunity. And just love to hear why, you believe in cold compression therapy as part of your, post-op regimen and, how it's worked for you.
Sure. So I'll just give a brief history of how we sort of started working together. So I met Molly, obviously, and Michael.
She's the best.
Yep, superstars. I guess it was about 7 years ago now. It was a while ago, and they sort of introduced me to the concept of cold compression therapy. I hadn't really been using anything at that time, And they just said, hey, like if you want to try it, we can do it for workers' compensation patients. And I ordered it, and it was very simple from my end. I just put in, I told my nurse or my scheduler, like, hey, this is a good patient for it. And then your team took it from there. And then the patients would come in and say, hey, this is great. I love it. So I started doing it consistently for all of my workers' compensation shoulder patients for, I don't know, 3 or 4 years. This was before we had any sort of relationship with you guys. So I was sort of a true believer in it, just because I thought it was clinically beneficial. And then my wife had shoulder surgery. She's actually done it twice, cold compression, once for her hip and once for her shoulder. And I can't remember if the shoulder was before or after the relationship had started, like the ancillary relationship we had. But she did, and she loved it. Basically, we did the 6 weeks, and then she signed. She requested a 30-day extension, and she basically would just say that, like, this is amazing. Like, she would sit there and watch TV, and after the kids went to school or what have you, or while she was doing work, most of her work is writing emails, so she would just sit there at the computer with the strap on, and yeah, she loved it, and it definitely helped her get through the acute, perioperative phase. So when she had her hip surgery a couple years later, she was like, "Can you get me that thing again?" Like, because it really helped. So we did, and again, it helped again. So that was just sort of how I got involved with you guys originally, and also my personal experience. And then again, Molly had approached me and said, we have this new system here where this can become like an ancillary revenue stream. And sort of talked me through it, and we had, there's multiple companies that do this now, I guess. So we had a few different people come in and sort of present it, and the one that you guys presented it just made the most sense for our practice. We had our billing people and our DME coordinator talk to everyone, and they came away with it saying, like, this is a company that we should work with. Easiest billing, easiest system, and then also just the most professional organization that we met with. No, if any of the other competitors hear this, no hard feelings. It was just a natural thing, and it's to be a very good working relationship. And then since we've done it, I've said this before, this has been basically a no-brainer, probably pound for pound, the best ancillary revenue stream that we have right now. At no point was it was cash neutral from day one. It took us about 9 to 10 months, I believe. We started off with me and a few other doctors trying it into practice, sort of as a, just experimental thing. We bought 5 units. Our DME coordinator came after the first week and was like, we need to buy more. And then I think now we have 27. We just bought more like in the last month or so. So I think we just bought 5 more. So I think we have somewhere between 25 and 35 at this point. I'm not entirely sure. And the revenue from these units was used to pay for them. So for 9 months or so, we were basically just sort of floating along. We were buying more units. And then at 9 month or 10 month, everything flipped. And since then, it's basically just been, essentially free revenue coming in every month. And it's nice when you have a revenue stream that also is clinically so beneficial. I mean, it's just like, it feels like a win-win. It's like, it's helping our practice. It's helping the patients. They love it. Sort of everyone is happy with it. We recently had a meeting with the workers' compensation carriers in town, and a lot of the case managers came. And they were sort of asking about it because obviously we've been using it a lot more after we bought the 5 and went up to 35, and after we had like the 3 doctors, now we have everyone in my practice using it. They're obviously noticing that there's been more prescriptions for it. And one of my partners in the practice, who, to be honest, was probably the least receptive to the idea. She was like, "How is this better than a bag of ice?" She was sort of like that in the beginning. She has sort of become the biggest advocate for it since, because she has recognized people coming in saying, this is great. This is making my recovery easier. Using less pain medication. It's just so obviously clinically beneficial that it's easy to argue for it. And so the case managers, workers' compensation, the carriers, they're always worried about cost, but they also know that, if they pay these fees up front, but the patients recover quicker, that's also better for them. So there really has been almost no pushback from them. All the rates are sort of, they're pre-negotiated, so it's not like they're getting surprise billing. So, just to summarize, long story short, it's great. It's great for the patients. Workers' comp people like it because it gets the patients back quicker with less narcotic use. And then we get, the added benefit of revenue coming into the practice on a monthly basis, which is, not insignificant. I mean, it's a fairly nice chunk of change. So it's just win, 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 win. Um, I've talked to colleagues about this. People have either called me and asked me about it, or I've just proactively reached out to friends and be like, hey, you got to do this. And, I had one friend who's like, we have sort of a lot of things sort of up in the air right now. We're trying to do this, we're trying to do that. And I said, I get it. We were in the same place. Trust me. Like, put all those things to the side now, put this at the top of your priority list, get it going, and then return to the other stuff because this will be the best thing that you guys do.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing. And
Yeah.
the relationship has been so fun for us to see, and you guys have been great to work with. And what I would say is, we've been doing this 15 years in terms of cold compression therapy, almost exclusively. So obviously we believed in it. It'd probably been more natural for us to become this all things DME company, but we really wanted to proliferate cold compression therapy, be stewards of this modality. And so there wasn't this kind of loophole or aha, moment in terms of, progressing into partnering with practices. It really was a progression and building a foundation. I will tell you, the silver lining for us of COVID, was that, prior to that, we fit every patient in their home. So we had 350 reps running around with units and providing this service to patients. And so then our reps were kind of like, what do we do? Do we drop the unit off on the porch? They're FaceTiming the patient, and we're like, okay, we have to figure out a centralized, remote service model. And I think you mentioned this before, and private practices to thrive, have to embrace ancillary revenue programs. The problem always was, it's really hard for a practice to dispense a rented product. All the reasons you probably think of, get the logistics, getting the unit back, the troubleshooting. If you did get the unit back efficiently and effectively, they come back in all sorts of conditions. I'd argue those units shouldn't come back to a healthcare clinic. And so what we did was marry that, remote centralized service model, with the in-office ancillary exception in Stark Law. And that's why most all private practices dispense durable medical equipment from their practice, because it's certainly they're able to. And so, we'll probably grow 10 times in the next however many years. The practice is, the program's being really well received. But I appreciate the call to action or the sense of urgency, because look, orthopedic practices and surgeons are busy. And so, this is by definition ancillary. And so, the hardest part is just taking the time to slow down, take a look at it and say, okay, we're going to move forward. But all the things you mentioned, are certainly hurdles that they have to consider. The practice absolutely has to acquire the inventory, meaning there's ownership there from a business perspective.
Yeah.
That certainly can be paid for through program collections, but that nonetheless is a business risk that is, being considered by practices. It has to be physically located at the practice. That's, and that's where I think, some of our physician partners are being misled in terms of, really not having to do much of anything and just provide a referral and get a payment. And so, it's harder than, not doing anything, but I think we meet practices where their capabilities are in terms of, dispensing the product. And then, like you mentioned, the patient efficacy side is paramount. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. And so the fact that your experience, mirrors ours in terms of the patient experience is music to our ears. So I appreciate you sharing.